Okay, I am back. Had a phone call, had to answer the phone. It's just going to probably get a little bit even noisier around here in a little while because people will be coming home. Um, I did want to correct the date, and I see now what my great grandmother what they were doing when they wrote on page 2 of the scroll. There are two dates here, and she actually took my grandfather, my great grandfather, and put his birthday there. But underneath that is another date, and I wasn't sure what that date was because her name is beside it, but it's not the date of her birthday on the first page of the scroll. So I knew something was going on there. And then after further looking at it, I see what she was doing. That is actually their marriage date, December 25th, 1889. And then a year later, my grandfather was born December 10th, 1890. And then, of course, Charles Newton and Alma Caroline Toole. And as I said before, there are a lot of repeat names through the generations. There are Samuels, there are Clarences, there are Almas, and there are Carolines and Carolyn that repeat through, even through my siblings. Now, she further goes on page 2 to give us some history of her husband's family, my grandfather's family. And so his father's name was Newton Toole. He's the father of Samuel H. Um, and his mother is named Sally. And Sally was his mother. And they were in Maryville, Tennessee. Both born and lived, and father died over at Maryville. Newton reported to be about 100 years old when he died. Sally moved to Knoxville with her daughter, um, and Mrs. Flora Toole. This is a dynamic woman. Flora Toole, my mother is named after her. Her name is Flora as well. This woman is powerful and dynamic, as was Sally Toole, I must admit. And I'll get into some more background. But she moved with her daughter, who is Flora Toole, who was married to a man who was. I said she's dynamic and powerful. Well, they were a duo. He was Dr. Richard Mayers. Um, um, and if you know about Tennessee and the accent, growing up, I always heard Dr. Mary's, Dr. Mary's. It wasn't until I was older and realized that some of the words that my grandparents said to us and taught us and were common in our household weren't really the way the words were supposed to be said. And so they called him Dr. Mary's, but his name was Dr. Mayers, Mayers. Um, so Mrs. Flora Toole, Elms Mayers, this is who Sally Toole, after Newton Toole passed away, she moved to Knoxville with them. Another daughter, uh, this is Miss Cohen, Henry Cohen, Mrs. Henry Cohen. This is Aunt Janie, my great grandfather's sister. Is another sister. So you have Flora, Aunt Janie, and then of course my great grandfather Sam too. Um, and then it said both of them died in Knoxville, Tennessee, prior to 1936. So that would be my great great grandfather, my great great grandmother. They both died prior to 1936. Dr. Mayers, Mrs. Mayers, the power couple, had no children. Um, when I recall when I graduated college, it was kind of a big deal, and people were saying, "Oh, are you the first person to graduate college?" And I could proudly say no, because my great great aunt graduated from college at the age of 16. These are the stories and traditions handed down to me and my family, that she graduated college at the age of 16. Dr. Mayers, who was her husband, Richard Mayers, um, always also college graduate. Um, they had no children. Now, Mrs. Cohen, that's Aunt Janie, who married Henry Cohen, they had 12 or more children. They had 12 or more children. So I have some distant relatives out there somewhere that I don't really know them. Um, Same actually on the McMillan side as well in Tennessee. Sorry to say, my mother had relationships with a lot of, I won't say a lot of them, but some of them she knew well before she passed, and had relationship with them even until my aunt, who she went to Tennessee to take care of, passed. Um, but I personally didn't ever meet them or get to know them. I think I did meet one, almost in passing, but didn't get to know them. Now, my aunt Caroline Toole, um, who I grew up knowing as Aunt Alma, this is my grandfather's sister. She married Hosea William, um, and then there's Casey. So I guess his name is Hosea William Casey. On October 17, 1936, in Knoxville, Tennessee. My Aunt Alma, also a college graduate and an educator by trade. Um, and there's more I'll go into on that. Clarence Elmer Toole, that's my grandfather, married Maggie Denham, my grandmother, on November 21st, 1920, at Knoxville, Tennessee. And then there's a little note that says divorced September 10th, 1927. Um, Children, Flora Georgiana Toole, and we come with that Georgiana again, but not really spelled the way that my great grandmother spelled hers, but still following the name tradition, handed down names. She was born May 9th, 1922, at Knoxville, Tennessee. And then my Aunt Alma, another Alma, Victoria, another Victoria, born Toole, Alma Victoria Toole, born December 28th, 1924. So I had said before in one of the videos prior to editing, um, that my great grandmother really, we weren't really her particular cup of tea. And I also mentioned the fact that my great grandmother and her siblings, the people on the scroll on the first page, were very, very fair people. Some chose to remain in those days what you would call Negro or colored, and some chose to cross over and to be known as white. So my great grandmother married a darker skinned gentleman, Samuel H. Toole, and um, as they began housekeeping and so on and so forth, as they married, had children, I'm not sure how everything came about, but they became somewhat prominent in the society in which they lived. I'm going to finish up with the scroll here. And I gave you the information off page 1, page 2. There are only 3 pages, and the last page is the notary. Um, the notary, and it's somewhat ineligible, um, but my great grandmother's signature is very legible. You can see it very easy, and it's I think the 22nd day of October 1936 that the above signed Miss Georgie M. Toole, who is personally known to me, and of course she signed off on the notarized page, and then the scroll was distributed to the various family members. One of the things that is painfully obvious to me now as I really look at it is um, that they were probably heavily in transition um, from slavery into being free. The other thing that I noticed is for some reason it didn't take them quite a lot of time to settle in and become property owners and develop a craft and profession that probably was, I don't know, kind of, I would think unheard of at the time. As I said before, my great aunt, one of them, and the other one, I don't readily remember stories about her. I remember my mom talked about her fondly, but I don't remember. They never talked about as far as education was concerned, although she did work. My for let me just say this quickly, and then I'll go into more depth and explain. My family actually owned a school. They actually owned a school after the end of slavery. Um, and I'm not really sure, as I go through the documents, I may run into a date when the school closed. But they, for all intents and purposes, ran a school and had property and really were pretty well off for just coming out of, when we talk about the institution of slavery, when I hear those stories and I do a comparison, I'm like, what did they do? Who did they know? How were they able to transition uh, so swiftly and just by, the things that they left behind, the stories and the things that I know about so differently from a lot of other people. Okay, um, going to stop this segment and come back with something else.